Good day everyone, my name is Anya Nelson Chelize. In this presentation, I am going to identify and talk about the key stages in application development. These are the steps involved in developing applications. By the end of this presentation, you should be able to identify the important stages in application development, explain these stages, identify the different application development models available. Now, let us talk about application development. To understand the stages involved, we must first understand what application development means. Application development can be described as the steps or process of planning, designing, implementing, testing, and maintaining software for consumer usage. Apps are programmed softwares made to serve specific purposes and satisfy consumer needs. As the world develops more and more, apps are needed more for everyday use. They are used in the business industry to keep track of financial records, games for leisure and fun, in schools to keep students' records, for socializing and communication, for creativity, and so on. Now, what are application development models? These are methods used to develop software applications, and they are used depending on the type of project at hand. They are the waterfall model, which is the most used of all other software application development models. We have the agile model, we have the spiral model, we have the rapid application development model, then we have the iterative model and the prototype model. During application development, despite spending so much time and resources working on a project, the end product might not be as accurate as the client requires. So, to avoid that, there are stages that need to be followed to ensure mistakes are not made or those mistakes are kept to a minimum. There are 6 stages or phases involved in application development. The first is the requirements analysis. This stage involves collaboration and frequent communication with the clients and end users to define the needs and specifications for the project. In this stage, essential documentation is made by the developers to collect as much information about the project from the clients and end users as possible before the project can commence production. Requirement analysis follows a simple process that defines how the analysis should be carried out. Requirement analysis is broken down to better understand what should be done first. The first is to identify the targets of the project. The shareholders or clients sponsor the project and decide what is actually added to it. The end users are also included because the project is created for them and must contain what they want. They are the target audience. The next step, the developers find out from the shareholders and end users what they expect the project to do. The needs are found out and documented. There are several methods of extracting the information. The developers could hold personal interviews, send out questionnaires, use application cases. These application cases are real-life scenarios of what the project can do, how the project can offer relevant solutions to real-world problems. The developers could also create prototypes which can be presented to the end user to visualize the final product. The third step, to avoid any confusion or future complications, the requirements are broken down mainly into 4 categories. These are the functional requirements. These functional requirements defines the requirements dealing with how the application works, the purpose of the application and what it will be used for. Then the technical requirements. These requirements deal with the special problems regarding the successful launch and execution of the application, like the needed resources, security problems, maintenance, etc. The transitional requirements. These are essential to the smooth execution of the application. This means the things that need to be done to be able to move from the current state to the final or desired product. Then lastly, the operational requirements. The operational requirements, they refer to the effective programming to be done in the back end of the project for the smooth running of the project. Now, after the requirements have been properly categorized, they are analyzed to determine how realistic the application is. The requirements are cross-checked to find out any mistakes and to make sure they are detailed properly. They are then separated into a critical and non-critical aspects of the application. Further analysis is carried out to ensure the application is feasible and enough resources are available for the project to work. After the analysis is carried out, the developers sign the contract with the stakeholders to make sure there will be no future problems with the project. The second stage in application development is called the systems design stage. This is where the developers will start working on designing the product. In this stage, the developers begin converting the requirements into designs to be used in the project. The layout, themes, customization, and other requirements are planned out. Images, prototypes, and renderings are made to visualize how the application will look like, how the different components and interfaces will interact with each other. Once a particular design is chosen, the development team will move on to the next step. The design stage will make use of systems analysis to break down the application into different components to find out how they interact according to the given requirements. Several things are taken into account when designing the application system, like the reliability and functionality, the cost of the application, the maintainability, and the user experience. Now we move over to the third phase in the application development. This is the implementation or coding stage. This stage deals with the real work of the application development. Here, the design is created with a set of requirements are transferred from paper into the computer by programming. Programming is the process of writing instructions the computer obeys and performs operations on. The developers do not just jump into it, they follow a process. Firstly, the problem is identified and analyzed, in this case, the requirements. They must have already been checked in the first stage for flaws and if it is feasible or not. After the problem has been sorted out, a perfect flow of the program to be written according to the system design is created using an algorithm. An algorithm is a method used to plan out how a program should be written. Similar to a flowchart, it plans out the steps needed to be taken for a proper programming. The steps of the program are written in such a way that one program leads to the other. Next, the developers start working on the project. They use the steps planned out in the algorithm to efficiently write the program that holds the functions and data the application will hold. The structure of the project is constructed. This is the back end of the project which holds all the instructions and data the application will follow and hold. After that, the front end is created. The front end is the part of the application that interacts with the user. It collects the data put in and runs it through the system of the application, which is the back end, to perform the operation the application was designed to do. Lastly, the program is run through a series of debugging and tests to make sure it meets the functions written in the requirements. Once the project has been programmed, the developers can move on to the next stage. We move on to the next stage, which is called the testing stage. There are two major reasons projects are tested. Firstly, to make sure the project follows the given requirements and gives a proper solution to the problem. Secondly, to test for errors in the programming. Even if the project was written flawlessly, there might be errors in the flow of logic of the project. The final project may not represent the requirements or give an answer to the end user, so it must be run through tests to make sure the requirements were met. There is a dedicated team in an organization for testing a project, but in some cases, the programming team does the testing. This is preferred because that way they can correct any mistakes made and they understand the requirements better. Irrespective of this stage, it would make the task of testing much more difficult. At each of the application development programming, the program must be tested for errors and mistakes in following the requirements. The sooner the problems are discovered, the easier and less costly the testing will be once the project reaches this stage. The process of testing the project depends on the type of error discovered. Sometimes the requirements might have been missed, and sometimes the programming might not be able to accommodate the problem. There are several testing methods or steps in the testing stage, but there are four basic or most used steps in the testing stage. These are unit testing, integration testing, systems testing, and the acceptance testing. The unit testing. This involves testing the smallest parts of the program called units to make sure they work. Here, each module of the program is tested individually. For example, the codes that operate a login page are tested to find out if they work properly and independently. Firstly, units to be tested are reviewed, then scripts for the tests are written, and finally, the unit is tested. There are two types of unit testing: the manual testing and the automated testing. Manual testing, as the name suggests, is done by a programmer who runs each unit of the program. Any error is corrected. The automated testing, on the other hand, uses a separate program which runs the test units and discovers any problem in the process. The integration testing. A module contains reusable codes that handle larger parts of the program. A module from one programmer might work differently when paired with other modules from other programmers. In this method, the separate parts of the project are tested in a group. This is to understand how the different components of the system interact with each other. The defects in communication between these parts are found out and corrected. For example, the login page, account page, and subscription page of YouTube. The programs dealing with all three of these areas are run at the same time to find out if each component works well with the others. It deals with the flow of data between these components. There are several methods of integration testing. These are the Big Bang approach, incremental approach, and the sandwich approach. In the Big Bang approach, all the separate modules are integrated and tested as a whole. In the incremental approach, two or more modules that logically flow together are tested as a whole for proper interaction. There are two components under the incremental approach. These are the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach. The top-down approach, the higher level modules which are related logically are tested together first before the lower level modules. A higher level module contains the planning and model of the application. It is the identity of the software. The second component is the bottom-up approach. In the bottom-up approach, the lower level modules that flow together logically are tested first and are used to make testing the higher modules easier. The lower level modules contain the implementation of the project. They execute commands given to the application. The higher level modules are dependent on the lower level modules to function. The third method of incremental approach is the sandwich approach. This is the combination of both bottom-up and top-down approaches. Here, both lower level and higher level modules are tested together. It is a hybrid method. The third type of testing is called the system testing. System testing involves checking the fully integrated software. The integrated software is the complete product of programming. The software will be connected to a system along with other softwares and components. While the integration testing only deals with groups of modules and programs, the system test finds out if the software has the correct system specifications and how compatible it is with a computer system. System testing evaluates the software based on the user's perspective. It is not tested by looking at the code. The software is tested for how it interacts with the separate components of its computer system, both software and hardware, whether it can take in input and give us the desired output, how the software operates from the user's perspective. There are more than 50 different types of software or system tests that can be done on a software depending on several factors which include cost of running the test, time available, resource available, the knowledge of the tester, and the budget. Some of the more popular system tests are the usability test, hardware or software test, regression test, recovery test, and so on. The last test to be done is called the acceptance testing. To put simply, this testing is done to ensure that it can be accepted by the public. The questions to be answered here are: will the public accept the software? Does the software offer the solution the customers need? Acceptance testing has two divisions: the internal and external acceptance testing. The internal acceptance testing is carried out by those in the organization who are not directly involved in the programming. For example, the Chief Technology Officer, the Director of Engineering, and the Product Manager. This is usually known as the alpha test. And secondly, the external acceptance testing. This is carried out by those outside the organization who aren't involved in the software's development. This is carried out in two ways. Firstly, by the customers or clients who ask the organization to create the software, and secondly, by the end users. This is referred to as the beta test. The software is tested by those who will use the product for everyday use, the target audience. The fifth stage in the software application development cycle is called the deployment stage. This stage is to ensure that the software is established in a suitable environment for easy accessibility of the end users. These are steps taken to make sure the software runs smoothly in the real-world environment. Any changes or corrections that need to be made to the software for smooth deployment is done before the software is released to the market. And the last stage in the software application development cycle is called the maintenance stage. Most software applications keep running for some time, and for that to happen, constant repairs and maintenance and upgrades are required to keep it running. This maintenance is carried out by the main developers of the software. The maintenance stage is the longest of all the other stages because the developers need to constantly keep updating the software application and making repairs where and when necessary. There are some factors that affect the usability of a software application, which are the changes in the user's needs or the increase in the cost of maintenance. In some cases, a new software application is developed while they keep on maintaining the older software for some time. Good examples are the Android operating system, Apple, Microsoft Office, and Windows operating system. These companies maintain older software for some time while at the same time releasing newer softwares. And now we have come to the end of the session. Thank you.